Hello, this is Tim Bum, and I want to show you how I assemble the shock absorbers on my Hyper 10 short course truck. I start off by lubing each O-ring with Associated's green slime before I insert them. Notice that the thin shim goes between the two O-rings. The thicker one goes in last. When installing the clip, I use a tool with a flat end like this 2mm wrench. Always check to make sure the clip is fully seated into the groove of the shock body. Before installing the spring adjusters, always lubricate the O-ring with the assembly lube. You will also want to lubricate the threads on the shock body. I always install the adjusters on the bottom half of the threads. This prevents the O-ring from getting squeezed out of the top. Always check that the adjusters are square to prevent cross-threading. If there's any resistance, stop and start over again. For the rear shocks, I drill all 4 piston holes out with a 1.2mm drill bit. This allows the truck to run smoother through rough sections of the track. For the front pistons, I leave those stock, but I still check for any burrs along the edges before installing out of the shock shaft. I install both E-clips with a pair of sharp needle nose pliers. Check the fit of the piston into the shock body before installing. If there are any burrs, you can remove those with either a small piece of sandpaper or a sharp X-Acto knife. I lubricate the shock shaft with the assembly lube before pushing through the shock seals. When installing the plastic heim joint onto the end of the shock shaft, I use a pair of special shock shaft pliers to prevent any scratching of the shock shaft. Before putting any oil in the shock, I assemble the shock cap with the shock bladder. I use the empty shock body to help seat the bladder snugly in the cap. For most tracks, I use the kit shock coil with the stock piston in the front and the drilled out pistons in the rear. When filling the shock for the first time, push the piston up and down a little bit to get the air out from underneath. Let the shock sit till all the air bubbles rise to the top. Before installing the shock cap, push the shock shaft up 1/3. Locate the hole on the shock cap and hold the shock body at about a 45-degree angle. Slowly screw the shock body into the shock cap, allowing the air and excess oil to escape out the hole. Snug the shock cap down and make sure that the shock shaft can be pushed in freely all the way. If you cannot push the shock shaft in all the way, you'll have to bleed a little more oil out. I hope this helps you get that first place finish, and thank you for watching.